Hey, folksies. So, in light of the new Wheel of Time TV series being made, I've decided to go through with a reread of the entire Wheel of Time series. So today I'm going to review Eye of the World, The Eye of the World. This is the first book in the series. I have read the entire series, mostly through audiobook. Now, I first went through the series quite some time ago. Like I think it's been maybe almost 20 years. So late 90s, early 2000s when I first started doing the audiobooks. Old enough, it was long enough ago that I rented them on cassette. So it's been quite some time. I did, a few years later, reread the first few books in the series, which I don't remember very clearly, but I'm certain that I did it. So now I've reread Eye of the World, and we'll talk a little bit about this. The first part of this review will keep spoiler free, and then I will have some spoilers as we go on. A couple things about the series, the Wheel of Time series, if you know anything about it. It was written by Robert Jordan. It is 14 books long, plus a prequel novel. The last three books were co-written by Brandon Sanderson, another very good fantasy writer. This book, this is a relatively new copy I got off of paperback swap. It's about, paperback version, it's almost 800 pages. 782 pages. This is not the longest book in the series by far. So it's a massive, massive story. 2,700 and some odd named characters in the series. There's only about 20 or so you need to keep track of. It is massive. It is a massive, massive series. So, a couple things in the first book. It doesn't change a lot in terms of typical fantasy conventions at this point in the series. There are some interesting changes that makes later. I'd say the only significant change is the wise wizard sort of character is a woman. Beyond that, it follows a lot of basic fantasy tropes. This first book does. It's still very good and very well done. Jordan does a good job of using point of view and using the point of view shifts between different characters to delineate the world. You don't get a lot of that in this first book. Most of the book is written from the perspective of Rand al'Thor, who is the primary protagonist of the series. But he does shift around a bit, so you get some of that. So for the rest of this, now I'll start talking about spoilers. So if you haven't read the series yet, go ahead and stop here. Several things on rereading that I noticed. The kids, the Emmett Field kids, not Nynaeve, but the other four, they really are frickin' clueless about the world. I don't remember them being this clueless. Now that I've gone through the whole series, it's also, this book is slower than I remember. It takes them 200 pages to get to Barrelon. I did not remember it being quite that slow. There are a number of romantic hints early. A lot of the romances that seem to pop up suddenly later are hinted at early. Between Rand and Min, between Nynaeve and Lan, there's actually quite a bit about them, and even some subtle hints about Moiraine and Tom. There are some interesting bits and pieces. Rand does show leadership skill early on, or earlier than I remember. When Nynaeve shows up in Barrelon, he realizes fairly quickly by asking some pointed questions that the village council did not send her. She came on her own, and he figures that out. We see some other early hints about Rand's leadership ability as we go, but that I didn't really expect that. I always kind of felt like Rand had leadership thrust upon him because of his situation. And that's not really the case. He really is more of a natural leader than I expected. A couple other tidbits I hadn't noticed before or I'd completely forgotten about. Matt speaks the Old Tongue before Shadar Logoth. So it's before he gets the dagger and before he loses memories and gets them restored by the Finn. Before any of that happens, he does that. He does it again when they're in the Blight. It leads me to think that Matt really has been a hero bound to the Horn, and he was bound to the Horn before he was born. So he was already destined to be Ta'veren, regardless of probably because of his proximity to Rand, but maybe regardless, I think he was already bound to the Horn. A couple of things. There's some people have made criticisms about Rand being kind of a jock. I don't think that's fair. He's not a nerd, but he's deeply curious about the world. He's not just a wool-headed lummox, as he's often called. He enjoys books, and as we see later, he reads quite a lot. So he's not. It's not fair to call him a jock, but not really a nerd either. But he's deeply curious, and he uses his mind a lot. Couple of tidbits. One scene that I had completely forgotten about. Toward the end, after they come back from the Blight. So let me read part of this. In the late afternoon, they reached Faldara to find the grim-walled city ringing with celebration, ringing in truth. The gates stood wide open. Men ran laughing and singing in the streets, flowers stuck in their top knots and the crevices of their armor. Victory in the Gap, we won! A miracle in the Gap! Spring! A grizzled old soldier laughed as he hung a garland of morning stars around Rand's neck. His own top knot was a white cluster of them. So I love this whole idea of all these grizzled Shinoran soldiers who fight the Blight all the time, and they're this very Spartan city that doesn't have any decorations or everything, and then all of a sudden, spring! Yay, we won! We put flowers in our hair, and put flowers in all the little spots in our armor. Yay, spring! I love that whole scene. I'd forgotten that it was there. Best line in the book is when Lan and Nynaeve are talking. But this is when they first get into the Blight. And when Lan and Nynaeve are talking, and Lan says to her, "I will hate the man you choose because he is not me, and love him if he makes you smile. No woman deserves the sure knowledge of a widow's black as her bride price, you least of all." It's heartbreaking. I know it all works out, but it is heartbreaking, that whole scene. I've come to realize that Lan is probably my favorite character, and the relationship that he has with Nynaeve is a pivotal part of the whole series. So, the world. I will be posting more about the series as I go through. I got this, like I said, I got this book off of Paperback Swap. I'll post a link to Paperback Swap down in the description if you're interested in it. It's a great service. They're not paying me or anything, but it's a great service where you can exchange paperbacks with people on the internet for free. Well, for the cost of postage anyway. So please like the video. Please click subscribe if you can. Please comment in the description. I'd appreciate it very much. Thanks. Till next time.